In this video, we will show you how to replace your rear brakes, pads, and rotors on this Chevy Trailblazer. This will be located behind your rear wheels. Let's get into it. Okay friend, let's get started on our job. The first thing you need to do is safely raise and support the rear of the vehicle so the wheels are off the ground. Once you've done so, continue on to removing your center cover. We'll use a trim tool for this. After that, remove all 6 of your 19mm lug nuts and then the wheel. Now that we have the wheel off, we have a clear view of our rear brakes. Let's pay attention to the caliper. We're going to have to remove this so we can remove the pads and the rotor. To remove the caliper from the bracket, you'll find that you have 2 14mm headed mounting bolts holding it in place. Remove the mounting hardware, give it a quick inspection. As for the first bolt, we'll start it back in a couple threads, continue on to the second mounting bolt. Now we can remove the caliper from the area. Just go ahead and give it a little wiggle. You might have to use a pry bar of some sort to get it out of place. Once you've removed the caliper, it's important to make sure you push back the caliper piston as far as it can go, and then check the entire boot area here, which is the dust seal, for any fluid. If you see any fluid, you have to replace the caliper. There's several different tools you can use to push this back. This is the caliper tool I have. Confirm there's no leaks. Go ahead and set that caliper aside so it's putting no pressure on your flex hose. Once you have the caliper out of the way, we'll continue on to removing each of the 2 brake pads. You have your outboard pad and the inboard pad. Go ahead and pry those right out of place, give them a quick inspection, and we can set those aside. Let's have a look along the backside here. You'll find that you have 2 18mm bolts that hold the bracket in place. Remove the pair. Once again, a quick inspection of the first bolt, and we'll start it back in a couple threads. Continue on to fully removing the second bolt. Now we can remove the bracket from the area. We'll set this aside. We will be working on this in 1 minute. Along the outside here, we'll take hold of the rotor, give it a wiggle, and carefully pull it away from the vehicle. There it is, friend. Go ahead and set that aside. Now that we have the rotor out of the way, let's clean and inspect the area. We have the mating surface on the axle where the brand new rotor will go. We need to make sure it's clean and free of any debris, and then of course we'll put on a little bit of anti-seize. Other than that, you also want to pay attention to your parking brake shoes, which are located directly behind that area. Make sure it doesn't look like they're worn or damaged. A quick inspection for any rust or rot in this area, because we don't want anything to fall inside. You can use a wire brush, get it all cleaned up. We'll use our wire brush on this area as well. A little bit of parts cleaner. Let's apply some copper anti-seize to the mating surface once it's fully clean. Let's prepare to install our brand new rotor. Slide that in place, continue on with one of your lug nuts. We'll bottom it out against the rotor to hold this in place while we continue. Now it's time to prepare our mounting bracket. To do this, remove each one of your tins. We'll pop that out of place, quick inspection, and we'll set it aside for recycling. Do the same to the other one here. Remove each of your 2 caliper slider pins. Take hold of the boot, tug the pin away from it. Use a rag to clean up that pin and give it a quick inspection. We want to make sure it's not damaged in any way. We'll wipe down the entire shaft and also pay attention up in this groove where my thumb is located. That's where the boot will sit. You want to make sure that's clean and free of any debris as well. We'll set it aside on the same side of the bracket that we had removed it. Wipe this one down. Get in that groove. Set that aside. Continue on to removing each of your caliper slider boots. Just take hold of that boot, give it a little wiggle, and separate it from the bracket. It should pop right off of there. Let's make sure it's soft and pliable, it's not torn, worn, or damaged in any way. Once you've done so, continue on to cleaning out the grease on the inside. Use a rag. Go ahead and give it a couple twists and slide it right on through the center. With that rag going through the center, we'll just work that boot around, removing as much grease or debris from the inside of this as possible. One more quick inspection on this boot, and we'll do the exact same thing to the other one. The next thing we'll do is clean out each one of our 2 caliper slider ports. We'll have a collection bucket, use some parts cleaner, and spray it directly into this area. Use a bore brush. We'll just give those a quick rinse. Now that we've completed that, we'll get rid of that bucket. And we want to pay attention along each one of those ports. You'll find that you have another small groove, just like on those slider pins. Clean that out as well, because that's where the boot sits. A small screwdriver or wire brush, whatever works best for you. We're trying not to get anything inside the ports. Once you've done that, the next thing we'll pay attention to is the 2 areas that we had removed each of those tins from. You want to clean it up. Make sure it's clean and free of any debris or rust. Once you've done that, we'll add a little bit of high temperature lubricant and then install our new tins. You can use a wire brush for this. Now, once this side's nice and clean, do the exact same thing to the other side of the bracket. All right, at this point, we'll continue on with some high temperature caliper lubricant. We're going to lubricate the areas where those tins will go. Just a tiny amount will do. You don't need a lot. When you go to install the tin, you want to press it into place, but you also want to pay attention along the center area. That's where the lock is, and it will tuck in along this area. We'll press it in, lock it in with the center. Double check to make sure it's secure, and do the exact same thing to the other side of the bracket. Once you've done both of those clips, continue on with that high temperature caliper lubricant. We'll make our way into each of these ports. Try to get along the edge here where that groove is. That'll help prevent moisture from making its way in. Install your caliper slider boot. We'll press that right on there. Give it a little spin, work in that grease. Continue on to your caliper slider pin. Lubricate the entire shaft. Once you've done that, make your way up into that groove. Once again, this will help keep moisture out of the area. Let's take that and slide it into place. Double check to make sure it's seated all the way around and do the exact same thing on the other side. Let's get this in the vehicle. Let's get this bracket in place. We'll start in each of our two 18mm mounting bolts, snug them up, and then we'll torque these to 148 foot-pounds. Now we'll torque this to 148 foot-pounds. Now it's time for our brake pads. Slide those right into position. The pad should be able to move around inside of the bracket when it is installed. If it can't move around freely, you need to take off the bracket and clean it again. I got plenty of movement from both of these. Let's continue on with installing the caliper. Before we install the caliper, take some high temperature caliper lubricant and lubricate right along the piston area on the caliper. Once you have that lubricated, you also want to lubricate the backside of each of these two ears. This will help with vibration dampening and noise reduction. Take that caliper and put it in place right on over the brake pads. Start in both of these 14mm mounting bolts, snug them up, and torque those to 23 foot-pounds. Now let's remove that safety lug nut. Now we can reinstall our wheels, start on all 6 of those lug nuts, and we'll snug them up. Let's get the wheel back on the ground. With the wheel safely on the ground, let's torque these to 103 foot-pounds in a crisscross manner. torqued. Now we'll reinstall our center cover. On that cover, you should find that you have this area that protrudes out, unlike any other. Look in your wheel. You'll find the area that it fits into. Align that properly and drive this into place. Okay friends, we showed you how to do one side of your rear brakes. At this point, you want to go ahead and do the exact same thing on the other side of the vehicle. Once you've done that, pump up that brake pedal till it's nice and firm. Take your vehicle for a road test and listen for any funny noises. Thanks for watching.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.